it just blew my mind. To actually see it and you go, wow, they've morphed you. You're a liquid mercury man, you're liquid chrome. I don't think I'll get over it, and I totally believed it.
Creating the T-1000 required the combined efforts of Stan Winston's company and Industrial Light and Magic under the direction of Dennis Murin.
At the beginning of this show, Jim had the boards already done, and you have to start with storyboards. You have to know what you're doing at the beginning. Can it even be done? A show like this, is it technically feasible to even do it now? And Jim was hoping it was, and I thought it was, so we all agreed that we could do it.
It was a constant, little juggling act in the very beginning to figure out what was going to be done optically, what was going to be done as a real life effect, and then what things from us would be needed for ILM to help them work things out optically, and vice versa. And it was, it just worked out as perfect as it possibly could have.
When the T-1000's abilities went beyond what was possible with animatronics, makeup, and prosthetics, ILM was given the task of creating the effects optically, literally redefining state-of-the-art for computer animation.
Computer-generated images are a way of coming up with new effects, especially when we've been doing traditional effects for 80 years. And you're starting to see, I think, a lot of sort of the limits of traditional effects, sort of the it's very hard to use the same tools and do the different things all the time.
Dennis and I sat down and conceived the process, and we sort of decided to concentrate on the Robert Patrick form, because Robert is the T-1000. We decided we're going to study his body, we're going to watch his movements, we're going to find a way to capture his quality, the way he walks, the way he runs, the way he behaves, the way his body changes shape. And that was, for us, was going to be the key that drove our visual approach to the whole T-1000.
At the making of the models, the studying Robert Patrick, we got Robert, and he was up here, and we painted a grid on him and shot a lot of footage of him, and we could see how the grid moved as his muscles moved and his bodies moved around. That was way back in the beginning of the show.
And so that gives you an extremely powerful guide for creating a real Robert Patrick walk, a real Robert Patrick run, which is in fact the T-1000 walk, the T-1000 run. So it's absolutely critical to our whole process.
We're trying to always duplicate human beings. Everybody's shooting for human beings. This is really the first successful step to adding real life to an otherwise inanimate piece of geometry. It's the wrinkles, it's the slight mannerisms of the eyes and the hands and stuff, just like a real human. That's the kind of thing, that's the extra step we wanted to take. We were destined to do that or nothing. We knew that other people had come so far, we wanted to go beyond that.
I dabbled in this a little bit in the Abyss with the water tentacle that formed the faces of Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and that proved to be very compelling imagery that people remembered indelibly from that movie. So that kind of encouraged me to take it a step further, or many steps further.
As on the Abyss, ILM employed a revolutionary laser scanning process to capture Robert Patrick's movements and form.
And one of the most powerful ways, or one of the most exciting ways to use it, is to get people's facial expressions in the computer.
I'm sitting in a chair, like this, and I can't move this way, I can't move this way. I've got to stay totally controlled, hit this emotion, and lock on this expression, like,
We can reconstruct the actor's face. It's a very free process. You can sort of go with what's happening and digitize those expressions as you wish. And we can immediately work with them, animate, model, create human, very realistic, very strong human faces.
Get out.
I mean, we work on this stuff, and every day, we still have not lost the spirit of amazement when we see what's coming out.
It's new, and that's what's necessary, is we can't have a sequel and just have it more of the same. There's some wonderful new surprises in Terminator 2.
Bringing the T-1000 to life has been a group effort. I knew I was in good hands, like with ILM and Stan Winston. I knew I was working with the best of the best. And I'd just like to thank them and the crew and my cast members.
Did that, and then there was just a point where they couldn't deal anymore, and they separated. Oh.
Anyway, I can't hide the thing behind this. Here we go, and action!
We had Robert Patrick come up here, and we painted a little 2-inch by 2-inch grid all over him, and shot him out on the back lot, walking with 2 cameras that were synced, so I could study not only his front motion but also his side motion, frame for frame. We also took a lot of pictures of him, and we scanned those in as well, and from that I built the skin over top of the actual bones. He was going to be the digital stunt double of Robert. In order to get that detail, right, we should probably scan his head.
Using some equipment that's called cyberware. And what they do is they scan a laser light onto anything you want. It can be a person in our case, it was a person. It just gathers the data, puts it into the computer, and the computer then puts it together in 3-dimensional space.
We now have to take our CG element itself, which is a character, an actor in the film, and make that come to life. We have to bring it to life like a puppeteer would. We have a lot of very talented animators who are able to essentially act through the computer.
What makes it really breathe is the secondary stuff. Mannerisms with the face, mannerisms with the fingers, muscles, all that kind of stuff really brings it to life.
At first, he just sort of rose up very geometrically and stopped, and his head didn't move, and he just sort of stopped and stared. Well, the next time we did it, we decided, okay, we'll have his head rotate a little bit, just the slightest amount, his shoulder move a little bit, you know, that kind of thing. And all those very small amounts of animation, as simple as they may seem, really seem to put the life into it.
But that's what it takes. You have to keep layering detail on top of it, because the real world is very detailed.
We now have to create a computer camera that's the same as the real camera, a computer set that's the same as the real set, and a digital actor that sort of has the same perspective and action and motivation as the actors on the real set.
The CG elements must cast shadows on the scene already in the image. The elements that are in the image must cast shadows on the CG element. If the environment is very shiny, it must reflect the CG element in the environment, so we have to add those reflection components to the picture. Similarly, the CG element itself, if it's shiny, must also reflect the environment.
You create a picture and then wrap that picture around the sculpture. That's called texture mapping.
The biggest problem was dividing up all the shots and sticking them in 5 separate categories. These shots were sort of broken down into the human figure team, the death team, shots that pertain to what we call the pseudopod shots, or polyalloy shots, and digital metamorphosis shots. Every shot poses some problem. Every single shot did, and it posed something completely new.
We were pushing the limits of everything. The amount of disk space we had, the amount of memory we had in the computers, the amount of CPUs we had. Each shot, even though it only lasted 5 seconds on the screen, typically would take about 8 weeks to complete.
A lot of our CG shots did have defects that we never solved, but we could solve them with digital paintwork.
They were pretty much done, you know, on a Macintosh and Photoshop.